we are following some breaking news. I want to take you out to the Middle East and give you a live look at the southern Israel-Gaza border. As we are learning this morning from the Associated Press, Palestinian medics are reporting that Israeli strikes killed at least 23 people in the Gaza Strip overnight into Tuesday. The dead include 3 children and their parents who were killed in a strike on their tent near the southern city of Khan Yunis. Now, these reports are coming from Nasser Hospital. Hospital officials reporting they have received a flood of dead and wounded since Israel resumed heavy bombardment of Gaza last week, shattering the ceasefire that had halted the 17-month war. A lot to discuss this morning, so we want to bring into the conversation the expert, Executive Director of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, Dr. Asaf Romirowsky. Dr. Asaf, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So these headlines continue to show that the ceasefire is no longer in place. There's been a lot of back and forth. Yesterday, we were reporting how Nasser Hospital was hit by an Israeli strike. IDF officials learning that a Hamas militant was inside receiving treatment. But we're also seeing how innocent Palestinians are being impacted by this conflict, also innocent Israelis. Could you provide perspective, please?
Sure. Let's contextualize the issue. So first of all, I mean, all of these hospitals, as we've seen at the beginning of the war, have served a dual purpose. They have served as Hamas bases, as Hamas rocket launchers. They've served as places where they've harbored intel as well as munitions. We saw that going back to the famous attack on the Shifa hospital. And so this is part of the Hamas tactics. That is to say that they take civilian entities and they turn them into terrorist ones. And that's part of the challenge that Israel has, as to your point, trying to disentangle, trying to remove how Hamas has basically embedded itself. Hamas is Palestinian society, and the challenges that you're facing today with the resumption of the fighting, with the war itself, with the war has never been over, and we are now basically about a month since phase 1 ended. And phase 1 ended, that was the last time we saw any kind of release of hostages. And there's been an attempt to try to continue the negotiation. That is to say, we want to continue the ceasefire. Hamas has refused to do so, given the fact that they know that the hostages are their lifeline in the process. And the unfortunate reality is that there are casualties on both ends. And we've seen this in the beginning of the war itself, though it is important to note that the kind of urban warfare that Israel has been fighting at the expense of their own casualties and civilians, that's been a consistent tactic that they've been using in order to try to, again, create an environment where they could try to maintain these safe zones for the civilian population of Palestinian society, such as it is, which is very complicated to begin with, and they continue to push in those directions. Hamas is the one that puts them on the front lines in order to aggrandize the casualties and to create the exact end result that they have. And in this process, you see here innocent civilians and innocents get killed in the process. And that's the unfortunate reality of this war that's been going on, as you and I have been discussing now for over 17 months now, where you have innocents. And this is another point that I can't stress enough, that the people, the hostages who are going through hell inside of Gaza, there is no parallels between, those innocents, and Hamas sees all Israelis, all Jews as legitimate targets, as combatants, whereas the Israelis don't. And so the equilibrium that that they are looking to portray is non-existent also in that process. And that's also part of the challenge that we are facing here time and time again.
Yeah, Dr. Asaf, I know from the very beginning of this conflict, you were expressing how Hamas uses innocent Palestinians as literal human shields, of course, embedding themselves in everyday society. Also, these tent camps. Some confusion this morning and some questions surrounding these tent camps, because people were under the impression that they were supposed to be, quote unquote, safe zones. So people not understanding how innocent people are dying in these tent camps. Could you provide that perspective, please?
Sure. So this is part of the Hamas strategy. I mean, every time the Israelis have pushed the population to say, here are the safe zones, go in this direction versus another direction, in order to move the population. We saw this back when Israel was going into Rafah near the border with Egypt in order to remove where Hamas was and where Israel was, where the fighting was. Excuse me. What Hamas does intentionally is tell the civilian population, don't move, stay where you are, stay on the front lines, because they know the media is watching, because they know exactly what's going on, and they're looking to create the kind of imagery, the propaganda imagery, that there will be Israel does not discriminate between population, which is indeed not the case. But in these safe zones, Hamas has been able to rear its ugly head and continues to do so. While Hamas is indeed devastated, I would say about 90%. As you can still see now with the resumption of the war, they still have capabilities. Rockets have been coming into Israel, into the southern parts. There are still, we're guesstimating 59 hostages. Again, part of this whole idea here with this resumption was to put pressure on Hamas that if they don't, then the war will continue. There are interlocutors with the Egyptians trying to put pressure on Hamas. The Egyptians themselves have said that until Hamas should be removed, and then we can continue to try to help in and take in some of the refugees and try to move along a calmer environment. This is the entanglement that we're in. And so long as the war continues, this is the Hamas strategy, then they know that they are around and they're around the table. Part of the confusion has been that over the past few weeks, we've also seen individuals like Adam Bowler, who made comments about Hamas being quote unquote nice guys. The other day, Steve Witkoff actually admitted on record that he was duped by the actual sincerity of Hamas to actually negotiate an actual ceasefire. So there's a lot of confusion that's coming out, even diplomatically, when it comes to Washington playing a role in this. Positively, indeed, Washington and Jerusalem are on the same page when it comes to them fighting Hamas, and of course also dealing with the larger threat of Iran, which of course this has all been part of the multi-front against Iran and Iranian proxies.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Asaf, actually leading into my next question, how with this growing conflict, a lot of pressure on world leaders. I know this Tuesday morning, mounting pressure on Egypt to do more as Israeli families and other families who have hostages still in Hamas captivity are demanding their release.
100%. And we just had now Eli Sharabi, one of the released hostages, who gave a testimony about the horrifying, really, days in captivity, the abuse, the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, who testified. So we have more and more mounting evidence as to how Hamas treats and abuses these individuals time and time again. And there's mounting pressure inside of Israel as a result of that, that every day that goes by, there is a greater risk of their survival. And so there's an outcry internationally and domestically in Israel. And to your point about Egypt, again, worthy of note, the Egyptians have made comments to Hamas that they need to be out of the scene so they can, again, to your earlier point, they can protect whatever is left of the civilian population. The Egyptians understand Hamas. They understand the threat of Hamas. Let's be clear here. Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt has not forgotten the stint of Mohammed Morsi when the Brotherhood took over. The Brotherhood also started in Egypt in 1928. From the Egyptian standpoint, that is also their way of fighting terrorism. They understand the threats that Hamas and Gaza represent. So they too are at least on the same page when it comes to disentangling and trying to separate this aspect. But that's the hardest part. Let's not forget that Gazans are indeed Egyptians. And so that's also the push there to try to see where Egypt can help out. And this relates, of course, to trying to clear the area as it relates to the Trump proposal, as far as the rehabilitation and what can happen when it comes to Gaza at large, which has been obviously devastated as a result of this war. And where do you go from here? And what kind of Arab actors and what kind of international actors Israel can work with and the United States in order to try to talk about a day after tomorrow scenario and what that looks like.
Well, Dr. Asaf, we always appreciate your thorough perspective and expertise on all things Middle East. Thank you so much for joining us for this breaking news alert. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, as always. Have a good one.
Thank you. And as we discuss Egypt, I want to share this with you and provide some perspective. So this time yesterday from the Israel War Room, they said the White House has reportedly delivered an ultimatum to Egypt, accept between 500,000 and 700,000 Palestinians from Gaza or face cuts to American aid. Those reports coming from a Qatari outlet. This morning, we have a response. This breaking news you now see on your screen. It says, quote, amid mounting U.S. financial pressure, Egypt has warned Hamas that continued rejection of ceasefire and hostage deal proposals will result in the closure of the Rafah crossing. That coming from the Israel War Room this morning. So as you can see, this is a very fluid situation. We'll continue to keep a close eye right here on Live Now from Fox.